This is the My Campaign Coach podcast, where we talk about how to win elections. Every week, we let you hear straight from the best consultants, operatives, and candidates in the game, all for one reason, to help you win. For more information about how we can help you win, visit mycampaigncoach.com. Now, here's your host, Raj Schaefer.
Welcome to the How to Run for Office podcast from My Campaign Coach. In politics, some of the most important people are often the ones who you rarely hear speak. Our guest this week has been working in the United States Senate for about 10 years and has been Senator Ted Cruz's right-hand man, but this is the first interview he's ever done. Before we get started with the interview, I want to remind y'all that the My Campaign Coach Minute podcast is live on iTunes and Amazon's Alexa. We're in the second week and we're getting some great feedback already. Each episode is 1 to 2 minutes long, and I share insights about concrete campaign tips that every candidate or campaign operative needs to know. Bruce Redden is a native of Northwest Oklahoma and became fascinated with politics relatively early in life. Immediately after graduating from Oklahoma State University, where he's still well loved for kicking a game-winning field goal over Alabama in the 2006 Independence Bowl, Bruce began working in Washington, D.C. I first got to know him when we worked for Senator Cruz's office and both joined in January of 2013. His experience as a regional director in Senator Hutchison's office beforehand made him an incredibly valuable resource to me as I learned the job, and it quickly became clear that he was an absolute master at it. Over the last 5 years that he worked for Senator Cruz, Bruce became an invaluable part of the team and Ted's right-hand man. If you saw Cruz on the presidential campaign trail, Bruce was either next to him or just out of the camera shot. From donor events to strategy sessions to helping choreograph the day-to-day of the campaign action, Bruce is right there. Today's podcast is going to give you a great window into what it's like to be a body man or a regional director. We'll talk in detail about our time with Senator Cruz and how Bruce developed such a close bond with him. With that, let's get to the podcast. Bruce, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thanks for having me, Raz.
Man, you and I have known each other for about 5 years now. I think that we met right as on our first day on the job working for Senator Cruz right after he got elected in like January 3rd of 13. But I want to, before we get to the Cruz stuff, I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about how you got involved in politics and your first couple of jobs there, which you were working for Senator Hutchison. Where did you come from? How did you get involved in politics and eventually get to work in the Senate?
Yeah, Raz. Well, again, thanks for having me. And I grew up in Northwest Oklahoma, not a very big town, a very small town, actually, about 13,000 people. And I have 4 older sisters, and so my dad kept me close to the nest so that I wouldn't be playing with Barbies or yet catching Barbies on fire. So I was always with my father, and he was in the oil business. And so I used to, growing up, I'd always hear him talking about, and this is, when I really started to comprehend it was when Clinton got elected in 92. And I really heard, I started learning about, what is a free market system? What is, an economy that thrives, that allows someone to leverage, some individual to leverage their capital and start something and see if they can become successful. And so I saw that firsthand, and a number of my father's friends were starting businesses and thriving following, Reagan's 8 years of great economic boom. And so I saw that, and I was like, man, this is incredible stuff. And I saw how passionate people got about it. And that's what really drove me to it. And so I signed up for Boy State. Attended the 71st session of Boy State in Oklahoma, and that really sparked me to really get into the legislative process. I didn't know anything about it, and that really lit my fire. And I said, when I graduate high school, this is what I want to do. I think I want to get into this world, and I just thought it was fascinating. And so I went to Oklahoma State, played 2 years of junior college soccer, went to Oklahoma State, kicked field goals for a little bit there. And following that, upon getting my political science degree, I immediately dived in and found out where I could go. I spent a small stint up in D.C. for a few months and realized that was not for me, being in a cubicle. And so Senator Hutchison, an opportunity came there, and that got me to Dallas. And I started working in her Senate office as a regional director and a deputy regional director. And then from there, I stayed with her for about 6 years, and then went with Senator Cruz.
So let's talk a little bit about what it is to be a regional director, because I've alluded to it as part of my background, talking here on the show. But that was kind of one of your first major political job. And I think it's one that a lot of folks aren't familiar with. Congressmen have regional directors in most cases, or district directors rather, and senators, because they have more territory, they have regional directors. And we had, I think, 8 of them here in Texas when we first started.
Yep.
Talk to folks a little bit about what that role is like and what some of the major responsibilities are there.
So as a regional director, and every senator and congressman can set it up however they want. But in the state of Texas, we followed the model that KBH had. She had it for 20 years. It was successful. However, we added you at what your role was. We added an 8th. We did have 7. We made 8 with you, covering the Fort Worth area and not just having somebody in North Texas. We split the Dallas-Fort Worth area up. But a regional director is the principal every day, the day-to-day operating principal in that region. And whether we in North Texas with KBH, we had 54 counties. When you came on, North Texas became about 26 counties, and then I can't remember how many you had in Fort Worth. But in those counties, in that region, you are the principal day to day. You attend chamber functions. You attend meetings that people request. You attend functions, dinners, breakfasts, lunches that involve the community. You are to be the principal in that region. And so every day you have to focus on what is going on in this region, write reports about it, send it to the senator so that he knows what's going on every day in that region. There's a charity drive here that a local group's putting together, or there's a chamber event here where they're honoring an unbelievable business. Well, those are opportunities for an elected official to get in and say, what, we want to honor him there. And with the representative not being able to be there, the regional director can be there and present a letter or a video, or give them a certificate from the member. There's a lot of things that you can do to get involved in the community. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what elected officials are due, to represent the constituents in their regions, and their ability to do that begins and ends with their staff as regional directors.
It's one of those really cool jobs where you're kind of operating as an extension of the senator. You are the representative of the office. You're sometimes speaking at events, like you said, in the senator's place. You're speaking effectively as him. You're delivering stuff. We would go and meet with everybody from county judges to industry leaders, chambers of commerce, Tea Party folks, folks that didn't like us so much on the other side of the aisle, that their constituents as well, and they deserve to be able to have their viewpoints heard and listen to them and hearing what they're saying. Transmitting that to the boss and the staff in D.C. and the other way, taking what the boss is doing up in D.C. and making sure that folks in our counties are aware of that and know how we're working to help them. There was a lot of times we would get stories of how different policies were impacting, either helping or adversely impacting folks in the district, and it's a really fun job. I had so much fun with it, and you had a huge part in training me to do that, because when I first showed up, I'd been working in politics for a while, but I didn't know what in the world we were supposed to be doing. Yeah. And your experience working for Senator Hutchinson and having learned how to do things so well was just an incredible asset. It really made me able to do my job well off the bat, because I could call you up and say, Bruce, what in the world do I do?
Well, I appreciate that. That's good to know that some of my advice actually was worth listening to. But yeah, no, you're exactly right, Raz. It's something where you are in all intents and purposes, you're the day-to-day senator in the region, and to be effective at it, and you alluded to what you're talking about, we're a few thousand miles away from Washington, D.C., and the people in that region, not everybody pays attention to the news, not everybody pays attention to all the emails and the updates that they get from D.C., and so one of the avenues that I always thought was beneficial was we are allowed as regional directors to talk about and emphasize and articulate what the senator is doing day to day in D.C. in our region. And so everywhere you go, you're talking about what the senator is doing, and they're giving you feedback and advice. And that's the way democracy and the republic is supposed to work.
So we talked a little bit about some of the day-to-day stuff, and in addition to that, I'd like to talk a little bit more in a bit about events, because I think that's one of those areas where you taught me a ton, and I had a lot of fun working with you. But the other side, the less day-to-day, And frankly, one of the most important parts of our job was when something honestly bad happened. And during our time, during 2013 and 14, when I was on staff, with Chris Kyle being murdered and with the West fertilizer plant explosion, that was something where in each of those cases, one each happened in each of our regions. We as the RDs were put into a very fast-paced role to get things done, make sure in a crisis response capacity that we were getting all the information up to DC, that we were working with state and federal agencies to get things done and make sure the boss was up to the moment informed. Talk a little bit about how that went from the perspective of the West explosion. For those that don't remember, West Texas, just north of Waco, there was a massive fertilizer explosion that killed, I think, several people, including a lot of first responders, and just devastated a significant portion of the city affected by it. We find that on Twitter. You're immediately on the phone with federal agencies and the governor's staff and the coordinating staff. Talk about a little bit how that developed, what happened there, and what your role was.
Yeah, so in a situation like that, it was tragic, and it was, people's lives were immediately changed, and they had no idea what to do. And in the local government, they don't have all the resources, and this is the first time something like that happened to these people. And so, and not that it happens all the time, but part of our role as being a federally elected member of Congress is there's a lot of things from the federal level that were able to happen in terms of resources. And so once you're the one that actually called me that night and said, hey, I think you texted me actually, and said, hey, I'm hearing something. So I immediately made a call to Scott McLennan, who is the county, it's McLennan County. Scott, what is his last? Scott, I'll think of it. Anyway, he's the county judge, Scott Felton. He's been there for a long time. And I called Sheriff Parnell McNamara, McLennan County, and I called them immediately. And it was, I believe you texted me at like 10 or 30 or 11 o'clock at night. And so I called them immediately, and the sheriff was aware of it. Scott Felton, they were en route to go see what they could do. But what I wanted to express to them first and foremost was, one, I'm going to be there tomorrow. I'm going to be there to help in any way I can. If anything from the federal government, that when you get all your teams together, if there's anything from the federal government or there are federal resources, I will be there to help coordinate and do everything we can to help facilitate any resources that you need. It's basically reaching out, extending that olive branch, extending that hand, saying, we are here for you. We know this is a bad situation. You're going to be dealing with a lot of things. We don't want to add any trouble or stress to your plate, but we are here to help. And when people know that they're there to help, one of the key factors that we did, Raz, in that situation was I was there every day on the ground at the EOC with all the teams. And I worked with the state fire marshal who was leading all the efforts on all this. I sat next to him every day, and at any point when a question came up with the federal government, myself, and at the time it was Tim Head, who was Bill Flores's chief, or district director, we immediately, anytime they needed something, we were there. We were able to contact our resources in DC and say, here's what they're needing, here's what they're at. And so you provide a kind of an easy step for them so that they're not reaching out. Who do we need to call? They're going to call an agency. The agency's not going to know what to do. When our office is able to call somebody, it expedites that process, and we were able to really help out in a fast way. And, even the Red Cross and all those, we were able to know where all those resources were, because what people don't realize is in a situation like that, a lot of times people were going to call 911 or something. Well, they're in a small town like or a small town like West, those resources become obsolete because everybody's doing something. They don't have the enormous staff like a city of Dallas would. West didn't have that. And so we provided an outlet with our office saying, if you're affected by this, please call our office and we can connect you with the right, even if it wasn't a federal resource. If you needed to get a hold of, the county judge or the sheriff's department, the police department, you could call our office. And we had staff in our Dallas office and in our Austin office that were standing by waiting for the phone calls so they could point those people in the right direction just to help in that process. And that's, we're all elected officials at the end of the day, and our job is to make sure that we help our constituents in any way that we can. And that was a way that we really provided a resource to them. And then in the follow-up with the different resources coming following, with the American Red Cross, they reached out to our office and said, hey, can you help us connect with the county judge to find out where the best spot for us to set up was. And we found an area and they got that isolated. We put them there, sent them the address, and American Red Cross set up there. It's just, you become a help. We become a liaison, but we're also there to help and understand. These are our fellow citizens. These are our fellow Texans that are going through a problem. We need to be there to help. And that was one of the resources we provided to them, was to be there and kind of help out with the local agencies as well as the state and county.
Yeah, you really step in to leverage those relationships that you've been building and the federal connections of your boss to make sure that people are served well. And that's where constituent service is really the key there. And you did a wonderful job. The funny side note to that tragedy was that I was in charge of getting the senator from Dallas flying in that a day or so later to West for the press conference, answering questions with Cornyn and Abbott. And I was pretty sure I was going to kill both of us on the way down there, because I got to drive the fastest I ever have in my life. I had a lead car you arranged for a state trooper to drive and get me down there because we were on a tight schedule. And literally I'm following with less than a car distance between me and the trooper down I-35, which anybody that's driven I-35 knows it's crazy. And we're driving under lights and sirens at between 90 and 100 miles an hour. And the senator was there on his iPhone shooting emails and playing games and stuff, and I thought I was going to kill us both. But thank God we both survived. He had much more faith in my driving ability than I did that day.
Well, and you just alluded to it on a smaller scale. Anytime you have a situation like that, like I was able to call. I had very good relationships still to this day. Have very good relationships with the Texas DPS, and I called a trooper that was in that area. And I talked to his commander and I said, hey, is there an opportunity? I don't want to take any way off their duties, but if there's someone available, we'd love to have a code 3 set up to get the senator there immediately. And it worked out perfect. And sometimes, Raz, you do have to drive to their standard.
Yeah, it was more of that story for another day, but it was something else. And, in other cases, this is what senator and congressional offices do when there's like wildfires out in California or hurricane in Houston or Florida. These federal offices step up in a big way because they know both the federal players and the agency level, as well as the local folks, the county judges, the city councilmen, and are able to do things like you talked about, like telling Red Cross where to set up and how to get in touch with the people that matter, because the phone lines are jammed. They have to be able to have people they can get a hold of, and so that's a little known, little talked about, but vitally important part of the role there.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the events for a second, because this was one of those areas where you have a lot of things you have to do, and you became a master of this and really taught me really well right off the bat. And we got to do a ton of events with the senator throughout North Texas, kind of riding shotgun for each other. Talk about let's say this, we have a big dinner that the boss is supposed to speak at. They got a hotel lined up. They give us our time. They've submitted their paperwork with their event request, so we've said, roger that, let's roll. What are some of the things that you would look at coming in, saying these are the main things we got to line out to make sure this event goes well for the people we're there for, as well as for the boss?
Yeah, so anytime you have a principal coming in to speak at any event, first and foremost, you want it to be as if that person rolls in and has, does not bring any attention. You want that person to come in as quietly and as peacefully as possible, because at the end of the day, the more you take away and you show up and you've got 15 people with you, 30 vehicles, you show up, you're taking away from the event that you're at. You're taking away from the purpose of the event that you're speaking at. And so it's not about the senator, it's about the message that he's going to deliver. So you want to eliminate all of that kind of gravitas of showing up with an entourage and just a massive group and taking away and taking time out of their event because you're there for them. And that's the way I always thought about things. So when you show up to an event, first and foremost, the senator needs to know absolutely everything that's going to happen. And that is done through briefing papers. And that's a whole nother show we can do, talking about designing a briefing paper and what needs to go in it. But at shorthand, you want to know every person that the principal is going to interact with. You want to know who they are, what they are, and you want to be able to brief the senator prior to that event. And so anybody that he's going to come in contact, anybody that he's going to be seated next to, anybody that's speaking, anybody that's being awarded anything at those events, you want to get all that information, because it is important to the principal whether they know it or not. It is very important to them. And as Senator Cruz would say, he wanted to know all that so that he could do the right things. And there'd be times that he'd want to know who was being awarded far before he even got there, or who somebody got an award earlier that day that was just being honored there, or a special guest that was there. He wanted to know because he cared about everything. The senator has a huge heart, and he always just cared so much about everybody at these events, and he wanted to stay, as you well know, forever to talk to every single person. You just can't do that. And so
that made scheduling fun.
You want to, so that's part of it. You want to know everything there is to know about the event. You want to know who put it together. You want to know who sponsored it. You want to know who's speaking. You want to know who is being honored, who's being awarded anything. And you want to know everybody that the senator is going to come in contact with. So who's sitting at his table. You want bios on all of those people because it is his job to know. And one, he's going to want to know that information. And if you don't have that readily available, he's going to ask you. And when you don't have it readily available, he's going to be upset, and it's going to make him look bad because these are things that he wanted to do. You have to, as a staff and an aide, your job is to make sure that the principal or the senator is 100% focused on the message he's going to deliver. It's not about his speech. It's not about how good he looks. It is obviously aesthetics is everything in politics, but he doesn't need to worry about looking up on his phone somebody who's sitting next to him because his staff didn't tell him. You want to have all that stuff ready and given to him so that when he sits down, he can talk to folks. He can be his true personality can show, and then he can focus on giving his message, delivering the message that they want. And so it is a difficult, events are difficult when you haven't done them. But as you go through it, it just becomes routine. I mean, one of the things that's minor when you think about these things is people are traveling. And the senator wears contacts, but when he's not at an event, he has his glasses on. And so one particular specific thing with the senator is every time you go in, you want to get to that restroom and you want to do it with seeing as minimal amount of people as possible because he doesn't like people to see him wearing his glasses. He wants to get in, change it into his contacts, and then go out. So, and then you have microphones. The senator hates to have a handheld because he's very animated with his hands. And so he would always have a lapel or a mic that would attach to his ear or something like that. And so you want to set that up. Well, the senator cares about his appearance, and so he would always run the wire down his shirt. Well, you can't you can't undo your pants, the belt buckle and everything, and undo your shirt in public with everybody seeing you. So one of the things that you always think about with Senator Cruz rolling into an event is if he's giving a speech, more than likely he's going to have a lapel mic, which is going to be a little battery pack mic with a cord that hooks onto his tie or his shirt. Well, that needs to be done in the bathroom, in the privacy of a bathroom. You don't want to do that in front of everybody. So those are things that you constantly look for when you're advancing an event and getting it ready for the principal is, where's the facilities, where have the mic there available so that when he shows up, we're not wasting the event people's time. Whoever's putting on the event, you're not wasting their time. And so there's just so many, and we can get in, for another show, we can go through advance and that type of things and briefing papers, but your focus needs to be, how do I get the principal to his seat and to his position, his table, or on the stage. But in doing so, you have to have all those other things put in place. Like from getting from the vehicle, what door are you going to enter that's going to be closest to a restroom so that you can get all those things situated and then getting to a seat. You're going to work with security teams. You're going to work with a number of other things to get all of that to work out. But there's a lot of things that go into play, but at the end of the day, your job is to make sure that he has every tool necessary to deliver the message he needs.
Well, and so much of that, really the core is your advanced work, and I think you're right. We ought to do a whole other show just looking at events because you got so much to share there. But with the right advanced work, all those different variables you talked about becomes very easy. It's kind of like practicing a play or production before you go live. And that way, we'd go together, we do the advanced work, we'd find out, where do we have to go get the microphone? We'd normally have somebody on site. One of us would bring the boss in, one of us would be on site. We have the microphone at the back door. The on-the-ground guys coordinate security, knows how to get to the bathroom, able to get the mic. All that stuff runs smoothly if you've done your advanced work right.
Exactly.
key part of it. And we'll also have to, we should probably have even a third episode just talking about how to work a picture line.
Exactly.
So, anybody that's actually got to meet Bruce in an event, and there have been tens of thousands of them, knows that he is the master of photo lines, that's like one of those parts of an event where you can lose the most time because everybody wants to spend 5 minutes talking with the senator while they're getting a picture at the VIP event or whatever. And Bruce is a master of making people feel loved, and like the senator got a chance to talk to him and got to have his undivided attention, but also moving more people per hour through a photo line than anybody in the history of American politics. It's there's a Guinness record out there for you if we could just get that lined up.
Yeah. On a side note on that, just real quick, the Texas State Convention in 2014 was the largest and most successful photo line we ever ran. We got roughly, I can't remember the exact number, but in an hour and a half, we ran through close to 500 people.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So looking forward, so you started working for Senator Cruz. You were training me and kind of getting me up to speed with my job. You're running the Dallas office where we had Brenda doing casework. We had interns. We had Flushy that was there as a deputy. And so you're running a staff of an office. We're coordinating with the boss. You started traveling more and more. And you got to, over time, you were more than just a regional director. You got to be somebody that Ted trusted and that he enjoyed working with because you were a rock star at your job. He really came to depend on you, and you got elevated to a senior advisor position, really, where you're traveling all over with the boss and you're helping them. You're advising the communications team and a bunch of the DC staff and the chief on down. Talk a little bit about how that evolution happened and kind of what your role became.
Well, I owe a lot of credit to both Senator Cruz and Senator Hutchinson. I didn't know, and I'll tell you, John Etu, who works for Congressman Williams, he is somebody that really came in and taught me a lot when I first came into the world with Senator Hutchinson. But being a body man full time and being with a principal full time, it's either going to be great or it'll fall out quick and you'll no longer be doing that because of the trust level, because of everything that's going on. You're in their personal space. And so it takes a lot. So for me with Senator Cruz, he didn't know me from Adam. When I first got elected, there was a couple people that told him about me, and that's why he considered me, and then he hired me. And then when he first started traveling, our scheduler at the time, Dougie Simmons, it is now Dougie Christofferson, she had worked with me with KBH, and she knew that I traveled with KBH full time. And when Senator Cruz first got elected and started traveling, he was kind of going by himself. That's just the way he did it because, he came from the campaign and they didn't have the resources to have 3 and 4 staff with him full time. So he didn't think he needed somebody. And then as he got to his first couple of events outside of DC, he realized, man, I do need somebody. And so Dougie connected and said, hey, would you mind traveling with him? So we tried it out. We went around the state and we did a couple of things. And, nobody knows at the beginning if it's going to work because your personality has to work with his, and you have to be willing to do the things that he wants done and do it in a way that he wants it done. You have to be able to adjust on the fly. And everything I learned with KBH was going to be different. Some of the things were going to be routine and similar, but it's going to be different. So as I got molded with Ted and he saw that I was adjusting and I could tell how he wanted things just by his reaction to things, and I would watch him. And so, for instance, his contacts, he never said, hey, I need to put my contacts in. I would watch him. The first time we showed up to a place, I knew he had his glasses on, and so I'm like, okay, he's either going to sit in the vehicle or he's going to want a restroom. Well, he prefers to go to a restroom so he can wash his hands and do all those things. And so he didn't have to ever say anything to me. I knew from that point on, from the very first time, that every time we go to a place, if he's traveling and he doesn't have his contacts in, that person needs, whoever's with him, which was going to be me from that point on, that I need to make sure whoever's on the ground, they have a restroom facility close by and available so that we would need to adjust in our schedule for time, an extra 5 to 10 minutes every time for him to go in, tighten up his tie or put his tie on and do that. He never had to say those things to me. I just watched and knew that that's what it was. Okay, this is how he's going to operate. So I accounted for that in my protocol. And so therefore, things like that would happen. And eventually Ted and I became very close. And that's how it evolved. I mean, once you're able to do all those things and then they trust you. And a lot of the trust came from just my knowledge that I gained from KBH. When we would show up to events around the state, I wasn't just isolated with KBH to North Texas because I traveled with her. So I had my core, solid core network was North Texas, but I also knew so many people across the state because of my travels with KBH. And so therefore, with Ted, we'd show up to places and I would say, Senator, this is Judge so-and-so, or this is Sheriff so-and-so, or this is State Rep so-and-so. And he'd be like, okay. And as we would pull up to those venues, I'd say, Senator, if you look out there, the guy in the black hat, that's, John Smith, that's Joe Smith, and that's Bart Smith, and he'd be like, oh man, all these people. And it was my job, but it's good for him to know those things. So, and once the senator learns your name and meets you, he's not going to forget you. The guy is a genius. And so as we would do that, he saw, man, this guy takes pride in his job and he is giving me the information that I actually need. And it's not information that a lot of people think. One time we showed up in East Texas, and it was Joanne Fleming, who's a very big supporter of the senator. It was her birthday, and the senator didn't know, but I happen to know those things because those are things that are important to me and they're important to the senator. But I said, hey, her birthday was a week ago, and I had a little gift from the senator because that's what I did with KBH. I figured he would want to do the same. So I had a gift. Yes, it was a week later, but he was able to present that gift to her, and it works. He was like, man, this guy really knows what he's doing. So there was little things like that along the way that have nothing to do with policy, have everything to do with character and personality, that he saw me do and really liked. And so that's how over years of that stuff, it becomes, routine and protocol, and he gets used to it. And so that's where our relationship really build.
It seems like so much of what you taught me, and what you're talking about there, it really comes down to the directors, the body man's ability to anticipate the needs of their principal, really being attentive to what they need and what might make their job easier, be able to take something off their mind. And I think the contacts and the glasses, it's a great example. The senator, he's the furthest thing from a prima donna out there, and he doesn't want to be like, hey, Bruce, every time we show up somewhere, I want you to find me a bathroom first thing. I don't want to talk or see anybody. That's just that'd be kind of a jerk thing to say, but you're able to look at the situation and be like, you know what? He's going to be able to focus more. We're going to take this whole thing out of his mind. He'd never have to worry about it again. For as long as I'm working with him, he will never have to worry about, how he's changed his contacts, where he's going to do that. I'm just going to know that. And that's more bandwidth, mental bandwidth he can put towards, solving real problems and doing real senator stuff. Yeah, exactly.
And it's, food. The last thing you want a member, especially when you're having a busy travel day, whether it's political or official, whether it's for the senator or the campaign, the last thing you want him to have to worry about is, oh, what do I want to eat? You learn those things. I know exactly what Ted loves to eat. I know exactly what he loves to drink. I know exactly what he hates. And so those are things you acquire, but good staff, good body men, good aides will know those things, and it's ingrained in their head. So therefore it's important to them. And when it comes to it, you have that food. Every time anybody picks the senator up, and this, I think this is partly because of me, but I've ingrained it in all of his staff across the state. Every time they pick him up, of the drinks they need to have. And it's not him being a prima donna. It is him allowing him to be able to focus on the things that are important. He doesn't need to be focused on, hey, I'm hungry. Nobody wants to go give a speech when they're starving. That's not fun to do, and you're not going to perform at the highest level. So therefore, you have those things available for him so that you can focus on the mission and get a lot more done and be the best use of his time. And a good staffer and a good aide, that's the things that they care about. Yes, they want to know the policy, and they need to be sharp on that, and they need to be able to tell the senator, here's what's going on in this area, here's the things that at the federal level that are affecting this region, here's what they're asking for, here's where they're focused. Of course you need to know all that. That's the easy stuff. The stuff that make you even more effective, though, as a staffer, is those little things that allow your time and his time to be maximized when you're on the ground.
And it comes down to even the very small things, like the types of pins you have in your pocket. Like you were really good and trained me, although I had one event where I forgot this, and regretted it. When you're working the photo line, you always have folks, walking up with something they want to sign, either a picture or a copy of the Constitution or something like that. And I remember, you always had literally a little bag in your briefcase that it was full of, I think, about every color and size of Sharpie and pin known to mankind. It's kind of a Mary Poppins deal with a bunch of pins.
Yeah.
And there was actually the last event that I worked with Senator Cruz. You had to step away to go get some people in, and I was working the rope line, and he had somebody come up and want to sign something, and I didn't have my bag within reach with the pins. And afterwards, he was really nice about it. I was like, "Oh, Raz, if you don't mind, like Bruce always has these pins, and if you could keep one of those on hand, we're doing the photo line and stuff. That'd be really helpful." And I was like, "Dang it, I always got one of those." And Bruce walks away.
Yeah.
One time, and those are the types of things. When you have that on hand, it makes the senator's job easier. It makes your boss's job easier, whether it's a candidate or elected official, because he never had to wonder where to pin. He could literally just put out his hand and knew that by the time that he had the thought, "Oh, I need to sign this," that you would have the correct pin. And you had it down to, like, based on the color of what was being signed, you could grab the right color Sharpie and the right weight for the amount of white space he had to sign. I mean, it was really a thing of wonder.
Yeah, those are the small things, but they go so far. I mean, think about the senator. Again, it's all about maximizing his time with his constituents, especially on the campaign side. For a candidate, a body man for a candidate, it's even more important because in a campaign, your time is very limited. Once you get elected, I don't want to say it slows down. That's a understatement. That's not the right use of the word, but things do slow down a little bit. On a campaign, you can't get enough time at a place, and you can't be at enough places. You just can't. And so your time is so critical when you're as a candidate campaigning, that those little things where you have somebody that doesn't have to unzip his backpack, pull out a bag, here's the Sharpie, go ahead and sign. Like, a good staffer is going to have a spot on his or her body that they're going to be able to, as soon as he sees somebody approaching the member or the candidate with a piece of paper or a book or a picture, they're already going to have that thing out, and they're going to, all the member or the candidate's going to have to do is just look that way, and the pen or the Sharpie's there, and boom, they sign it. That 30 seconds to a minute is going to maximize his time or her time so much more than being able to see so many more people, being able to sign so many more things and have a bigger impact on so many more people. You don't think about it being a big deal, but it really is. And photo lines are a big, big deal for candidates.
So let's move forward to the presidential campaign, because by the time Ted was launching that campaign in, I think March of 15, late March there, you'd been on the staff for over 2 years. You were traveling with him a lot around the country as well as around the state, and were in a very senior position within the campaign in his office. You talk about kind of how that evolved and really some of the big things that you got to do on the presidential campaign and how you got to serve there.
Yeah, so, when we launched the presidential campaign, March 23rd, it was March 22nd or 23rd, I think it was 23rd, I knew that life was about to change in a big, big way. Never thought that we would achieve the things we achieved. But because of what I was able to do, and because I was the person I was and the personality that I was and the fit that the senator and I had, it just made sense that, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel on this or take us out of our element. I was just going to stay in at that role and supplement other places in terms of communications and things like that to help out. When we started the presidential, I think there was potential talk of us doing a couple of, maybe having one or two people, or figuring out what was the best route. At the end of the day, the senator and I and the team that Jeff Rowe put together, it was like, look, I'll just stay with the senator full time, and knowing that it was going to be a big, big role for me, because you're gone every day of the week. You don't get a day off. You're campaigning every day. So I fulfilled that role, and we had a bunch of staff, regional staff in all the different states. I would be on the phone with them talking about events, to how to set things up and what the days look like. I would be talking with the scheduling team, talking with the press team of, here's where we're going to set up gaggles. This is the best way. Because at that point, Raz, I knew exactly how the senator wanted to operate. I knew exactly where his comfort zones were. And in something like a presidential where you have cameras on you 100% of the time, you want to make sure that he's always in his comfort zone so that you don't have the right. Now, I will say that the senator is the most unique politician I've ever met because you can't rattle the guy. I don't care how you do it. You can't rattle him. But it's also helpful, and he performs at a higher level when he's in his comfort zone. And so my job became, okay, whether it was dealing with the comms team or the speech writers or the advanced teams in the different states or, people dealing with volunteers, it was my job to make sure that I gave them as much information about the senator as possible so that all of us collectively could be successful at every event. And that's not easy, especially when every day you're doing anywhere from 5 to 10 events a day. And in between, as you're in the car or the bus or a plane, I'm emailing and calling people to the next stop and the stop after that to go through that stuff. And so they're having to change things on the fly. In a presidential, you can't do it alone. And the body man role becomes increasingly more important because he needs to know everything, he or she needs to know everything that is happening, and they have to be able to ask the right questions to the people on the ground in order to get the right answers that the senator or the principal is seeking. And that's where we put together an incredible team, whether it's, Catherine Frazier, Rick Tyler, Jason Miller on the comms team that we were operating on, or the political team that had John McClellan, David Sawyer, Ethan Zorfus, Brian English. I mean, they were kind of LaDonna Riggs in South Carolina. Our political team, they all kind of got into the mold of how the senator operated, and that was through the communications they had with me, but also just the repetition of doing the events and stuff. And when we launched the campaign, I didn't have a clue what anything was going to be like. And when we got to Lynchburg, Virginia, and he gave this massive speech, emotions are flying everywhere, you realized, holy cow, this is real and this is happening.
Right.
And it was an incredible feeling. And when he gave that speech at Lynchburg, albeit it was 45 minutes long, but regardless of the length of the speech, he captivated that audience. He captivated the people that were there and the people that watched it. And it was so inspirational. And I tell you, the biggest thing about a good candidate is when they have that ability. This is a guy that I knew Ted at this point better than anybody else on the campaign because I spent more time with him. And for him to be able to step onto that stage, I knew the speech. I read the speech 3 or 4 times. But when he's able to get up there, and when you talk about just an unbelievable candidate, he gets up there and delivers a speech, and I'm sitting right next to the stage because I had to walk him out, push him through the crowd, get him through everything. When he walks off the stage, I'm in shambles. I'm so emotional. Tears are coming from my eyes because he just had inspired me. And this is a guy that, I spend every day of my life with. I've heard him
right.
give 1,000 speeches. That's, again, it's a team effort, but having a candidate like the senator, being able to articulate and inspire was a huge, huge benefit to all of us on the team and allowed us, every one of us, to be a better employee and to be a better staffer. But one of the biggest things I would say from the presidential was how close the senator and I grew together. And I learned so much from him. And I think he'll tell you he learned a little bit from me.
Just a little bit.
There's so much. You're in such a personal space when you act as I did, that you have to instill the trust. You have to have that trust, and you have to be able to give him good advice. There's a lot of times that, the senator would wake up and we'd be leaving for the day, and I'd be like, you know what, I hate to tell the senator, but we need to fix the hair, or you didn't, I think you had your contacts off when you brushed your hair or when you picked your shirt today. It doesn't match. It doesn't go well. You have to be, there's a lot of times that you have to be able to say those things. And I'll tell you, Raz, there's a lot of people, especially at the staff level, that would never tell their boss who's an elected official, hey, that shirt's terrible. You need to go change it.
Right.
Or your hair's jacked up. You need a haircut. Or, hey, you've got something on your face. Go what, you have to be able to get past the gravitas of him being a United States senator running for president, and I'm just a staffer who works for him, you have to be able to say those things. And when you grow the relationship like the Senator and I have, it becomes second nature and it becomes like a brother.
So what were a couple of your favorite war stories from the campaign?
Oh man, I'll tell you, there's so many.
You had about 14 months of them.
Yeah, there's so many. And it's hard to categorize and to pick just one or two that are awesome. But I'll tell you some of the most memorable, and everybody that knows the Senator knows that he's not a morning person.
Nope.
He's not going to get up at 4:30 a.m. and go for a run. But he will outwork anybody I know. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I had to stand next to him for better part of 5 years, and I can tell you he will outwork anybody. But one of the coolest things was we had gotten word from the top of our campaign that Phil Robertson was going to endorse. And what that meant was that we had to get down there and shoot a video.
And that's Phil Robertson, the Duck Dynasty guy, right?
Exactly. And so I got word the day before, hey, let's get prepared for this. So therefore now I'm having to call security folks in those areas, getting all that stuff set up with the team, and knowing, okay, here's our schedule. We didn't get to Louisiana until about 11:30 the night before we were shooting the video. Well, the video was going to be, the Senator and Phil in a duck blind, so I know we were going to do some duck hunting. So I was extremely excited. And I'm a huge Duck Dynasty fan, and it was just unbelievable, so surreal. But we get in at 11:30 that night. Well, as any avid duck hunter knows, you got to get out before the sun comes up. And so we were given our marching orders that you'll be up and at 'em at 4:30 a.m. ready to go. And I'm like, ooh, here we are.
You're like, has Ted ever woken up that early? I don't think so, but this is going to be a fun wake-up call.
Yeah. Here we are at midnight now, and we're en route to the cabin that we're staying out there on the Robertsons' property. And I'm like, ooh, this is going to be difficult. Well, my alarm goes off at 3:30 so I could send a report to everybody, make sure everybody was good to go on the team. And if there was any last minute, changes to a script or anything that I needed to take care of. Well, as I get up at 3:30 that morning after 2 hours of sleep, I go across the cabin that we were staying at to just, see if I can hear the Senator up and going. And I didn't hear anything. And so I kind of knock on the door, and to my surprise, the Senator says, "Yo, come on in." And so I open the door, and he has got his hunting gear on. He is bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I was like, wow. And not to mention the days and weeks preceding this event, we were going, 7-8 events a day, traveling nonstop, getting 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. Like, it's not like he came from, going to bed at 10 o'clock and waking up at 8 o'clock every night. I mean, we were getting a couple hours of sleep a night, and he was exhausted. And here he was, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to go. We show up. We have breakfast with Phil and their team. And just being there and knowing the love that I have for Duck Dynasty, that was an incredible time. It was really, really surreal. Hearing Phil Robertson's tell you some war stories himself is just incredible. He tells a lot of stories how he leads people to Christ, and it's an amazing story, Raz. And so that was definitely at the top for sure.
Man, I got to spend some time with Phil during the Iowa leg of the campaign when I was doing Super PAC stuff up there, and was just phenomenally impressed with him. But I heard a story from a mutual friend the other day about Phil. They were recently up doing some recording and some video shooting up in New York City. And they're getting ready to leave their hotel, getting everything packed up to go to the airport. And as they're coming out of the hotel room, Miss K, she the lady that's coming to clean the room, she just gave her a hug and said, "Thank you so much for all you're doing and for taking good care of us." And the lady just broke down crying. And just nobody had ever said thank you to her in her entire time, working there. Just nobody ever said thank you. Just kind of ignored her. Yeah. And Mr. Phil came over and gave her a hug, and he's like, have you heard nobody's ever given you a hug before? Has anybody told you about Jesus? And just, sort of share the gospel in the hotel corridor there, and pray with that lady, and just had I was like, that's real character. That's real love for Jesus and love for your fellow man. And it's
absolutely.
It's funny, people see the rednecks on Duck Dynasty, and they may have some some thoughts, but meeting him in person is pretty cool, and I'm glad we both got to do that.
Yeah, it is. They're an incredible family. Very, very honored to have met them.
Well, brother, I appreciate coming on. I definitely do want to have you on sometime soon. It's always fun getting to talk to you, and I've got to spend hours and weeks and better part of a year working closely with you, and more time since you're your friend, and you've taught me so much that it made me good at my job, or at least not fireable. And I appreciate that, and I want to get some more of that information downloaded for our listeners. But I appreciate your time today, and I think everybody got some great takeaways and hopefully some fun war stories about the Senator. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, Raz. Thank you.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Bruce Redden. He's a good friend of mine and the Senator's right-hand man, and I've learned a lot from him, and I think he shared some great stuff that'll hopefully help you guys as you're running campaigns and applying those, whether you're a city councilman and have the folks that are helping you on the campaign trail or running for U.S. Senator, Governor. You have people around you that are essential to making you a success. It's really a team effort, and no matter how much a candidate brings to the table, the biggest things I think that they have to offer come from the team that they build. And Senator Cruz has built an incredible team, and for those of us that have got to work on it, we're grateful to have that experience, and it's pretty cool meeting the new guys coming on board as well. Thank you guys for listening. Give us a review, a rating on iTunes if you get an opportunity. And don't forget to check out the My Campaign Coach Minute. We've been doing that for a couple weeks now, and I think you'll enjoy that as well. Talk to y'all again next week.
Please subscribe and rate us on iTunes to help spread the word. We'll be back with you next week with more campaign insights from My Campaign Coach.